Don't shoot yourself and die. Haters are softer than pumpkin pie. Out of my body, ain't even alive. I found all the
I woke up. I found myself in a dark room, laying in a bed, inside of a hallway. A hospital hallway. The atmosphere was dark, and I could see countless to endless beds in the distance of this hallway. After looking around my surroundings, the reel of memories flooded back to me. What happened to me? I thought silently to myself. I stood up, and I instantly almost tripped. My body suddenly felt sort of incomplete. Then, I looked at my hands. Every few seconds they would kind of glitch out. I realized that my whole body would do that. It was like my model was sort of corrupted. Then I started walking and walking. Questions were filling my mind. I couldn't comprehend what had happened to me. But then a memory came back to me from some weeks ago, that mysterious document from the manager. Is this that hallway? I thought. Then that means I'm still inside of the Wii, I continued. I sighed. But after that, I noticed that my voice changed. It sounded weird. It sort of sounded glitchy and distorted. Then a realization came to mind. Maybe, just maybe, the shock of electricity that I received corrupted my model. Maybe even my soul. Made it act like this. But I hoped it was not permanent. But soon enough, I continued walking, looking for a possible way out. I needed to go back to the hole. As I walked, the hallway started getting darker and darker. Suddenly I got to the end, and I found a door right in front of me. As I went through that door, I found a chair with a mysterious machine beside it, including a headset attached to it. I just stood there, kind of speechless. When I entered, I instantly got reminded of the mysterious electric chair that was mentioned in the reports alongside the hospital hallway. I couldn't comprehend it, but it was real. Then, suddenly, I heard a scream. It was an agonizing cry for help. I immediately rushed outside. When I got out of the room, I saw a me, or better said, Henry's me. I stood there for a second, looking at it, and examined it directly. It was wearing light blue hospital clothing, holding its hand to its stomach, containing a very fearful and paranoid expression plastered on its face. I stared at it for a couple of seconds. Then, without hesitation, I jokingly tried to be friendly to it to see where it would go. It was obviously just a me. It wouldn't kill a fly. "Hey there, fellow me," I said. Then, I noticed that on its hospital clothes, it had a little name tag with its name, and I read it out loud. "Eled, huh? It's still a weird name," I continued. But then, the me suddenly spoke. With a shocked tone it said, My name is Henry, and what are you?" "Wait, Henry?" I jumped backwards, taken completely off guard. I was not expecting it to do anything, but... Henry? No, that's impossible. But then, I remembered it all. I remembered that Henry was screaming when I was being electrocuted. It all connected in my head right from that moment forward. For some sort of reason, we were both electrocuted, and Henry died from the result. And now, Henry's soul lives in this Wii, or more specifically, in his me. There's no viable way Henry now lives as this me, I thought. We just stood there for a couple of seconds in complete silence with barely no movement. I was in true shock. But then, I snapped back. I remembered what he did to me, and I started to slowly walk to him. And while I moved forward towards him, I started to speak. Well, look who we've got backed into a corner here. How's it going, old friend? What have you been up to? I myself have been having a nice time around here and adapting. Wonder why? Oh, maybe it's because you're the reason why I'm dead. Henry stood there, eyes widened while shifting back towards the wall as he responded weakly. Austin? How the hell did you end up here? You're supposed to be dead. You're supposed to be gotten rid of. I killed you! He exclaimed in fear. Oh, you thought you killed me, huh? Hilarious. I'm truly charmed, Henry. Did you really think you could have taken me alive that easily? I alleged back at the figure standing in front of me, abruptly obtaining confidence in my voice. It looks like the tables have been turned around towards my side. Really? I chuckled before continuing. It looks like I was worthy of obtaining a second chance at life, just how I desired it. What better way is there to use the time I got than giving you what you deserve? The hopeless figure only fearfully stared back at me, looking objectively just like prey. Austin, please, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to turn out like this. I'm sorry for killing you. I have been really trying to move on from it, I swear to you, Henry whimpered. He continued only to cower in panic. It's too late to go back and try to fix the past. The both of us are dead and we can't take it back. But it's not too late to fix what comes forward. We can always make peace and move on from the past. Can we? He anxiously exclaimed. His offer only became more and more desperate. I only scoffed back in disgust. Well, you really should have thought twice about acting like you did before taking it out on others, Henry. I worked too hard for this company, and it's all thanks to you that I've lost everything I've worked up for. We're stuck here, and there's nothing you can do about it. You wanted to take everything from me, didn't you? I could feel my adrenaline rushing, my temper taking over. It would only be so long before I snapped. I couldn't wait another second. I rushed towards him forcefully and punched him directly in the face. Henry's body was shoved backwards away from the force of the hit. Henry placed one of his hands towards the spot of the hit and held it, before locking eyes with mine. He growled back at me, finally cracking. You want vengeance, don't you, Austin? Very well. Henry then charged at me and tried to tackle me, but was abruptly stopped from my swift movements. Before he could pin me down, I slammed my fist right towards his face once more, hitting him, before he collapsed onto the floor. Henry rose again, standing up and attempting another attack with his right arm, but it was blocked by mine. Then, I noticed his leg, and did a leg sweep that made Henry fall over. At the distance, I noticed the room where the electric chair was located. I grabbed a hold of Henry's leg and began to drag him towards the room. He was struggling, but I didn't hesitate one bit. This was what I always wanted. I finally arrived at the electric chair room. Then, I threw Henry towards the electric chair and tied him up while he was desperately trying to fight back. I was quick to find a dial in the device beside it, and I proceeded to crank it up. It was around 2 seconds before it started, but in those seconds, I looked at Henry's face. He was looking at me with an angry look. Henry then was severely electrocuted for several seconds. I only stood there and watched the view, satisfied, with a grin on my face. Well. Look at how the tables have turned once again. Oh, how pitiful it is to see you here all helpless and restrained, with nowhere to run. This is what you get. When the procedure was finally over, Henry had passed out, and I looked at his body, happy with my accomplishment. Some minutes had passed, and Henry hadn't woken up. While I waited for him to wake up, I decided to kill some time by doing anything, but I didn't know what. But, while I was still at Nintendo, I figured out how to easily pull up the Wii's internal files and developer tools while I was directly inside the Wii. So, while Henry was still strapped to the chair and passed out, I was busy examining the code of the mysterious hospital hallway and the electric chair. While I was examining it, I figured out that the hospital hallway is where Mii's go when they get erased in the Mii channel. When they get erased, the Mii's get automatically strapped to life support machines in the hallway, and a pain value triggers in their code, meaning that they also go through extreme torture when they get deleted, and this pain value stays triggered in them forever, until they die, and the value doesn't seem to be removable. And the pain could even be multiplied by a bug in the code, if the Mii would somehow be deleted multiple times, but that was unlikely to happen. Soon enough, after some amount of time decided by RNG, the Mii would die, and get completely erased from the Wii's memory. The code seemed to have been done by an amateur. It was super easy to read through, and it was filled with errors and bugs. Simply by looking at it, I found out how to easily escape the hallway and go back to the Me channel and back with a bug on the code. I didn't understand why all of this was here. By a technical standpoint, having this extra process on the Wii's processor would not help with anything, and by a developer standpoint, this feature didn't make sense either. But anyways, I started looking at the electric chair's code after that, and I found out that it creates fake shocks to simulate electricity, so it wouldn't have any of the normal effects real electricity could cause on someone. Basically, triggering a pain value on the patient's code again, but this time, the pain doesn't stay until they die. The code didn't point to this chair being used for anything. Its processes and features were not tied to the hallway at all, besides them being connected by rooms. After I stopped looking through the code, Henry hadn't woken up yet, and I got tired of waiting. So, I used the bug I found in the code to send Henry's unconscious body back to the Me channel. After that, I left the room, and I discovered one of the holes to go back to the hallway place, which sends me to the other electronics at Nintendo. In relief, I ran over to it. But, when I tried to go through, something stopped me. It was like a barrier. An invisible wall of sort was pausing me from going through. I could not even see the other side. I desperately tried to go through, but I was unable to. I kept pushing myself for several minutes. Thoughts were filling my mind while I was in the process. I'm never going to escape this stupid Wii, I thought. I only stopped as I let my temper rise. I was livid, and that couldn't stop me from hitting the wall beside the hole. I couldn't stand it any longer. I pointed the blame towards this abominable world for trapping me inside this damn Wii, and for everything. I swore one thing though. Henry's going to regret it for what he's done to me, and he won't get away from me this time. I immediately rushed back to the Me channel, and I saw Henry standing there, awake and deep in thought. I remembered what I saw in the code of the hallway, that the Miis would go through extreme pain when deleted, and that gave me a great idea. I sneaked up on him and I took him down to the ground. I grabbed a hold of his leg unexpectedly, and I started dragging him to the delete icon on the Me channel. We finally got to the delete button, and I forced Henry inside of it, but before I finished, Henry whimpered in defeat. "You heartless bastard." After the deed was done, I felt not quite satisfied with my achievement, so I decided I could play with Henry for just a bit longer. I went back to the hallway and found Henry standing there, with his back facing towards me. I headed towards him, only with taunting intentions. "What's the matter, little me? You're not a fan of getting deleted?" I teased, smugly looking at him. Henry suddenly shifted his body direction and faced me, but didn't speak a word. "Aw, what's wrong, Henry? Are you scared of me? I wouldn't have expected you to back down this easily. You were so ruthless back there. What happened to your confidence, huh? You know all of this is your fault," I continued, smirking to myself in delight. From what I least expected, Henry talked back. "Don't call me that," Henry responded with an almost silent tone. "Now, what was that? I need you to speak louder." I raised an eyebrow, but only went on, taking charge of the conversation. Henry's pupils expanded, to the point of almost completely covering his eyes. Before I could think of it, Henry pulled an axe out of nowhere and shouted, "Don't call me Henry!" Immediately after crying out, Henry rushed after me, about to swing his axe. He quickly got near me and swung his weapon with force, but I surprisingly caught the blade with my hands. I didn't think it would work. I even expected to miss. My, you think a little weapon is enough to scare me? Where the hell did you even find this?" I exclaimed. After I said that, Henry continued swinging his axe while I was backing up. "I think it can!" Suddenly, Henry luckily struck a hit on me, right on my chest. I dropped on the floor, holding my hand on the wound. My vision panned down. My wound was huge. There was no blood or anything similar, only pain. Pain that I needed to give back to Henry. "So, do you really think that would do anything to me?" I exclaimed. Without hesitation, I quickly rushed at Henry, leaving him with no time to react. I grabbed him by the neck and pulled him up. With a grin on my face and a scared look on Henry's, I glared down at my hand. I forgot I had modeled it to be low poly, so they looked like claws. I realized they were perfect for the job. I smiled. and swiftly cut Henry's head off with my claws. I dropped Henry's dead body on the floor, but I was still not satisfied. I knew that Henry would appear on the hallway again at any minute, and he would most likely find a way to get back to the me channel. So, I figured that playing with Henry for the rest of eternity wouldn't be satisfactory, since he would come back again and again. I started walking. I wanted to find a way to punish Henry for all that he did to me once and for all. The pain on my wound had already stopped aching by then. While I continued walking, something caught my eye. On a wall at my right, I saw a broken glass box with the label "Emergency" on top of it. That must have been where the axe Henry was using came from. It would be obvious they would add some kind of background prop like that in this kind of scenery. Then I ignored it and continued walking. While I was walking, I started brainstorming various methods, but suddenly a memory came to me. I remember the thing that I found while working on homework for college all those months ago. ECT. Electroshock therapy. If I could use it correctly, I could make Henry go through extreme pain and forget everything about himself. But how? I knew that the electric chair inside the Wii caused fake shocks. I started thinking. But then, an idea came over me. "The power supply!" I exclaimed with excitement. I realized that if I could find a way for the electric chair to draw in real power from the power supply, I could guide the electricity towards the electric chair. But for it to work, the Wii would have to be plugged in, something that would be hard to achieve. Except if some unlucky bastard bought the Wii we were in. If I could execute the plan while the Wii was plugged in, it could work. But then, I realized that if the motherboard, where the processor and RAM were, suddenly got a lot of power from the power supply, the motherboard and the rest of the Wii could overheat or even melt. So I only had one chance to do it. One chance to finally punish Henry once and for all. I immediately ran towards the electric chair room and got to work. I knew that it would take a lot of time to do, especially because of this messy code, but it would be worth it. Then, I started modifying the code of the electric chair. I was modifying it so it would draw energy directly from the power supply. It was difficult because the code of the chair was really messy, but the progress I got so far was excellent. I thought the plan would be executed perfectly. Until, a couple of days later, I felt the Wii power turn on. "Somebody already bought the Wii?" I exclaimed. But it was barely 10 days after the supposed launch date of the console. Was the Wii that popular for it to sell that quick? I questioned to myself. I rushed to the Me channel. I saw Henry standing there, looking at the screen, acting just like a me. And on the other side of the screen, I saw a kid, a little kid. And this kid was looking at Henry with a frightened expression. Ah, perfect. An innocent kid now has to experience Henry's bullshit, I thought to myself, with a hint of concern. As much as I despised all of humanity, I always had a soft spot for kids. I knew that they were purely impeachable and naive. They never meant any harm. Unfortunately for them, though, it won't always be this way. They'd eventually grow up to become just like the rest. So, if I wanted to execute my plan without affecting the kid, I would have to wait. But my thoughts were interrupted by the kid. The kid suddenly grabbed Henry with the Wii remote and deleted him. I was shocked by this happening. I didn't think the kid would delete him. Damn, was that me really that creepy? I thought. Then, the kid proceeded to create a new me. This me was seemingly less obscure compared to Henry's, with average features, but it appeared identical to the kid's appearance. And this kid named his me Kyle, something that I would assume was the kid's name. But by the time the kid finished his me, Edeled was back at the Me channel. He must have figured out the bug too, huh? Then the kid immediately deleted him again the first chance he got. He proceeded to leave the Wii menu and decided to go play some Wii Sports, the Wii's packed-in game. I didn't want to stay to see the rest. After all, the modifications to the chair were still not done. I went back to the electric chair room and continued with my work. But after around 20 minutes, I heard the kid outside. Apparently, he started having a conversation with Henry back at the Me channel. I couldn't make out any of Henry's words, but I could hear the kid. The kid was mentioning how Edeled was creepy, and how he didn't want him in his Me channel. I felt sympathy for the kid, for having to deal with Henry and all his bullshit. But that gave me even more motivation to punish Henry. Some days had passed, and while I was messing around with the files, I figured out how to change certain properties of the Wii's image. I could make the screen go black, go to static, completely disconnect it from the TV, and I could even change the atmosphere of the Me channel. But I bet that Henry already figured out how to do it, since he also figured out the bug to go back to the Me channel. I thought that this ability could be useful for my advantage later. Around a week had passed, and I was almost finished with the modifications to the chair. I hadn't heard much of the kid, until that same day, I heard a new voice. I went back to the Me channel to see what was happening, but when I arrived to find Henry in the middle of killing a Me, the kid's Me, with an axe. Kyle's Me seemed to be in a lot of pain. It seemed like Henry had cut off the legs of the Me, and was about to deal the final blow. Henry sure has something about cutting off legs, huh? I looked at the screen and I saw the kid, and another one, I would assume to be his friend. I wanted to stop Henry, but I was too late. He then proceeded to cut off the Me's head with the axe. After a couple of seconds, the Wii got unplugged, and I went back to the electric chair room, defeated. I felt guilty that I couldn't stop Henry. It's safe to assume that the kid, Kyle, is now in some sort of shock, or even traumatized, along with his friend. But that pushed me even more to do what was needed. As more time passed, the chair was finally finished, but I haven't felt the Wii being plugged in since that day. It would be safe to assume that the Wii was saved somewhere, or even returned to the retailers. So I waited. It was a long wait. But I would sometimes find myself daydreaming about how it would feel to be a human again. I couldn't even finish college when I was alive. I left my parents with so much college debt. Or I would find myself dreaming about many other things that came out of my imagination, like self-made TV shows, drama, comedies, etc. I would even play Wii Sports every once in a while. Being inside of the game itself would be something that my past self would have loved, and it was kind of fun, to be honest. And sometimes I would go back to the Me channel and play with Henry. But the things I did were not satisfying me, because of the anticipation to finally execute the plan. Now, it had been around 10 years. I could tell by the Wii's internal calendar. I was taking a nap, sitting beside the electric chair, until I suddenly felt the Wii being plugged in. I instantly woke up. I didn't hear the kid. I heard a female voice. She proceeded to open the Wii menu, and then she started to talk to Henry. Again, I couldn't understand Henry, but I could hear the new voice. Apparently this new voice was named Sam, but she had empathy towards Henry and treated him with kindness and respect. She didn't want to delete him like Kyle did. I was a bit annoyed by that. I didn't think Henry deserved to be spared. They then proceeded to talk about how Mies are sent to a horrible place when they get deleted, but apparently Henry didn't want to speak more about it. That's all I heard that day. I got excited with temptation by the thought of this. I could finally execute my plan, but I would have to wait for the perfect moment to arrive. It would likely have to wait a couple more days, I thought, and so I started to wait. Until 2 days later, I was sitting on the electric chair and I was puzzled, quite bored. It felt too quiet, until I suddenly heard Henry talking to Sam. I realized since I could hear Henry, it meant he was most likely in the hallway for some reason, since I couldn't hear him when he was on the Me channel. I was taken by surprise by this. I didn't expect Henry to be deleted, especially by Sam. Sam, I'm not upset with you. I understand that you want to know what happens when a Me gets deleted, but please, never do this again. The pain gets worse every time I get deleted. I'll meet you in the Me channel, Henry explained with a weak voice. I knew that this would be the perfect moment to finally reveal myself to Sam. I saw Henry going back to the Me channel, so I forced the screen to go black, and I started reaching out to Sam. I didn't expect Edeled to be here, I quietly started. Who was that? Sam questioned frightfully. You'll find out soon, I concluded with a tease. Then, I let the console go back to the Wii menu. I wanted to keep myself mysterious in my identity to Sam for a bit longer. I didn't want to do everything at once, so I'll just have to keep it smart and inexplicable for a couple of days, just to make it perfect. But, the next day while I was listening outside the Wii, something got my attention. I heard Sam, talking to someone over the phone. But that someone surprised me. It was Kyle. Kyle? There was no way. The kid that Henry traumatized all those years ago? It wasn't possible. But anyways, Kyle introduced himself as someone who used to own this same Wii and accidentally donated his Wii to a Value Village thrift store. Then he started talking about how he was contacting Sam to destroy the Wii, to deal with Edeled. It seemed Kyle had some similar intentions to mine. We both didn't like Henry one bit. I smiled at this. Knowing that someone also wanted Henry to be punished made me happy. But then, Sam declined the offer from Kyle. I was expecting that. Then, they had a little argument. "No! Edeled isn't some cold-hearted murderer!" Sam yelled. "Well, he chopped off my Mii's legs and head," Kyle shouted. "He grew up in a bad environment! And how do you know? Edeled told me!" Then, they went silent. What Sam said shocked me. He grew up in a bad environment? How selfish. I was alienated by society, labeled with a bullshit mental condition, and punished for it. But that didn't make me a cold-hearted murderer, like Henry. I was the opposite, really. I was finally contributing something good to society, and Henry had to take it away from me. How insensitive, I thought. After that, I felt Henry turned on the Wii himself, and Sam started affirming to Henry that she was not going to let Kyle do anything. Damn it, I thought. But I was given the perfect motive. After their little conversation ended, I made the screen turn to black, and I started speaking to Sam once again. "Oh, I wish Edeled was deleted. I miss doing all that stuff I did to him." "Who are you?" Sam screamed at me. "Someone that needs to complete a procedure that had been postponed again and again," I affirmed. "What do you mean?" Sam asked. "Electricity can cure a lot of things, especially when the shocks go right to the head," I affirmed. "What do you mean?" she demanded one more time. Henry wasn't the only one to become a me, I concluded. Not wanting to reveal more, I shut off the console. After that, I heard Sam go to bed. I chuckled. I knew the plan would be perfect. I started making preparations. I proceeded to delete all the axe files from the Wii, including all other weapons, in case Henry was to use them to defend himself from me. Then, the next day, I was just done with the preparations, but something that happened surprised me. I heard Sam calling Kyle again, but this time, Sam invited Kyle over, because Sam wanted to know how Henry would react to Kyle. But Sam made sure Kyle doesn't bring up anything, to make sure he doesn't destroy the Wii. I was not expecting that to happen. Sam sure was an idiot. But I knew that this would be the perfect moment to execute my plan. Then, I realized that if I were to show myself, I would have to reveal my name. However, I wanted to prevent revealing my real alias, Austin. I wanted something that could confuse them, and maybe even strike them with fear. I started thinking for a bit, then finally, I came up with a good enough name. Corrupted Me. I decided on that name for several reasons, mainly referencing how my body and voice were corrupted because of Henry. And I was, indeed, a me. It made sense, but I could have come up with something better. Yet, there was not enough time. After about 15 minutes, the Wii turned on, and Henry and Sam made some chit-chat. Before all else could occur, the bell rang. I was enlivened, delighted, and enthralled. The adrenaline in my veins rushed with the fever of excitement. The anticipation was killing me. So, I made my way over to the Me channel and hid myself, so Henry wouldn't see me. By the time I was there, I saw Henry greeting Kyle. On the other side of the screen, I saw 2 teenagers. I saw what I recognized to be Kyle, but grown up. Puberty sure did hit him. And I also saw who I would assume to be Sam in his right. Surprisingly, this was my first time seeing them. I couldn't wait any longer. I wanted to execute my plan right now. Anticipation was killing me. I have been waiting 10 years to do this, but I had to wait for the conversation to be over. Then, they started talking about what Kyle remembers about Edeled. "Well, I remember deleting you because I didn't want you on my Me channel. And I also remember you violently murdering my Me," Kyle explained. "So you're saying I'm a murderer?" "Maybe. Kyle replied. Yes, I silently mumbled, with agreement with Kyle. Then, Henry started shouting at Kyle, because Kyle didn't learn the lesson to not delete me's. What utter bullshit. But I was about to delete Henry for the final time. When their little discussion was over, anticipation took over me, and I made the screen go to static. It was finally time. I took the camera over to the hallway and put it under one of the light sources. I wanted them to see me. Then, when I was ready, I started speaking. Oh, hello, Sam. Did I interrupt Edeled's little meltdown? I teased. Sam looked at Kyle and asked, Do you know who that voice is? Kyle, being confused, said, No, I have no idea. I never heard that voice before. Heh, it's honestly funny to see you trying to figure out who I am. But, how about I just show myself right now? I concluded. Afterwards, I finally walked to the point where they could clearly see me. I smiled and revealed myself. I am the corrupted me. They looked at me for a second, and I saw some relief in Sam's face. She was happy that the mystery was finally out. Finally, I made the screen go to static again and took them back to the me channel. And I made the me channel dark to strike fear in Henry and them. If I wanted to execute my plan, I needed Henry to be deleted first, because the chair was over at the hallway. So, I had to do it myself. I made my way to the me channel. I stealthily moved up behind Henry and covered his mouth with my hands. Then, I started dragging him over to the delete button. Ready for some therapy, buddy? I said while dragging him. Henry was struggling for his life while I was dragging him, kicking and struggling. But he couldn't say anything since I had my hand covering his mouth. We finally arrived at the delete icon, and Edeled freed his mouth from my hand. Let me go, you son of a motherless goat! He shouted. For all the curses in the world, why did he have to say something so stupid? Damn, I was expecting him to say something better, but what could I expect from someone like Henry? I covered his mouth again. You shut the hell up and deal with the upcoming pain, you understand? I hope you know the pain that you're about to experience will be more than you've ever endured. 650 volts you're getting, my friend. 650 volts! Actually, I didn't know exactly how much electricity he was getting, but I knew that the Wii's power supply could draw enough electricity to be effective for Henry. I just came up with that number to intimidate Henry. I wanted to see him beg for his life. I saw over at the screen, and both of them had fearful, terrified expressions on their faces. Sam was obviously fearing for Henry's wellness. Good, I concluded. When I finally deleted Edeled, I made my way over to the electric chair room, while also leading the screen over there. But while I was doing it, I felt the Wii get disconnected. Did Kyle take it? I wondered. But I knew that Sam would most likely get it back, so I continued strapping Henry to the chair, while he fought for his dear little me life. But we heard Kyle running with the Wii. He was most likely taking it somewhere. Then, I felt Sam taking it from Kyle, and she ran. I looked at Henry and said, Looks like Sam is stronger than we thought, right, Henry? Well, she being so nice to you is going to be her downfall, I concluded. What is it that you want? Why can't you get over all this? It's been 10 years or even longer. Why won't you give up on all this nonsense? Henry questioned with concern. I looked at him for a solid second, and then I hesitantly responded. I will never accept how things happened. I'm done being manipulated by this world. And we can't go back to how it was before. But I will make my last living moments the most enjoyable they could ever be. Henry, after acknowledging my response, looked at me and looked away. He suddenly had an expression of regret in his face. Maybe he was finally regretting what he did to me. But it was too late. Well, we now just gotta wait a bit so I can finally put you where you belong, Henry, I said while putting on the headset to his head and taping his mouth shut. Then, after our little conversation, we finally felt the Wii being plugged back in. I forced the Wii menu to turn back on, and I saw Sam looking at us with worry. Finally, I walked over to the electrical box beside the chair and cranked the dial. Henry then finally got severely electrocuted, I could hear his mumbles of pain while that happened. He was finally getting what he deserved. I couldn't be happier. The therapy was coming along nicely. I saw him shaking in pain, with tears rolling down his face. After a couple of seconds, I stopped it. I knew by doing this, Henry would forget many details of his life, including stuff about this Wii. When the procedure was done, I looked at Sam and said, "Well, it looks like Edeled can't just teleport back to the Me channel anymore. Boo-hoo," I said smugly. "I wonder why." "Oh wait, it's because the electricity made him forget how. The electricity is very good at doing that. It cured Edeled of that knowledge. But now, I must cure him of himself." I reached my hand over to the dial, and Sam screamed, "Let him go!" I obviously was not gonna do that. After that, I saw Kyle entering the room with a bloody nose. "Sam, I just don't want Edeled to do any more harm," Kyle told her. "You mean you don't want the corrupted me to do any more harm?" she replied quietly as she looked back at the TV. Then, without saying a word, I proceeded to crank the dial once more. Henry got severely electrocuted again, but this time it was even stronger. He was shaking even more. I could tell he was in extreme pain. It brings satisfaction to my eyes. I could finally see Henry suffer for what he has done. After a couple of seconds, I stopped the machine. While keeping my composure, I exclaimed, "Well, I guess the procedure is over," I said. Just one more shock. By now, the Wii was doomed to be melted and destroyed by the power supply, bringing more and more power into the Wii. But I just couldn't stop. Punishing Henry is the one and only thing that has truly brought me joy this last 10 years. I simply couldn't stop. This time, I cranked the dial to full, and Henry was shocked badly. He was shaking and crying. I was so happy I could jump. My life could be over right now and I wouldn't have any regrets. Then, Sam turned off the TV. After a couple of minutes, the procedure was finally done. I knew the power supply couldn't handle any more power. Then, Sam and Kyle had a little discussion outside. I even heard some screams of pain from Kyle, but I was too occupied admiring my work. I reached down to Henry and grabbed his chin. "You know, Henry, I have had so much fun with you these last few years. You would feel guilty for what you did to me, but you probably can't even remember what you did," I said. "But I guess this will be our end, since this Wii will melt very soon. Thanks to you." I untied Henry, but he was barely conscious. I sent him to the Me channel, and I followed soon after. I saw Henry. He told Sam that the Wii would melt very soon, but I made the screen go to static because I wanted to talk to Sam. When I appeared on the screen, Sam almost jumped at my sight, but then she asked me what I wanted. "I want Henry in hell. That's what I want. I want Henry to burn in the fiery pits of hell," I answered. "You're sick." "You're not the first person to tell me that," I said. "Good," she stated. "Maybe I should pay him a little visit," I exclaimed with excitement. "Don't," she demanded. There was a pause. "Why so angry, Sam? Is it because I gave Henry some therapy?" I asked smugly. "Some therapy? It's torture!" she yelled. "Oh, shut up. It's not torture. It's an actual, recognized form of therapy," I said. "I don't give a damn what it is. It's torture!" Sam yelled again. "If you insist. But let's pay Henry a little visit." I cut the screen to static again, while I made my way to the Me channel. The static stopped, and now I was at the Me channel, standing facing Henry. I saw that the textures of the Me channel were beginning to go all over the place, corrupting. This likely meant that the Wii was beginning to overheat. "Hello, Edeled. How are you?" I said with enthusiasm. You get away from me," Henry said with anger. "Why should I? Oh, wait. You're going to get your axe and try to chop my legs off again. Well, guess what, little me? You can't. The axe no longer exists, nor any other weapon exists on this Wii. I wiped it all out from this console," I exclaimed. "No," Edeled sighed. "But there's really no point in giving you any more pain, though. This Wii will melt in the next half hour, so there's really no point in doing anything anymore." I concluded. Henry looked at me and said, "Burn in hell." We were both silent after that. I knew that I had completed the deed. I was satisfied. The debt was done. Sam picked me up and dragged me over to the delete icon, and deleted me. Sam had successfully gotten rid of me, once and for all. I only ended up falling. The tones of my body dipped backwards. My pupils dilated at this new, yet such familiar sight. Was I back in the void again? I wasn't wrong. The entire world had seemed to finally crash down on me. The walls collapsed, and the fall was endless. Unlike last time, a peculiar feeling entered me. I was senseless, helpless even, but I felt relieved. Everything had felt finally complete for me, and this was something I had never felt before. I finally sensed what happiness feels like. I had left the world I was once in before, and entered the never-ending void. This was destined to be my fate, permanently. I am finally rid of the aggravation, the wounds which have slowly repressed, the scars that healed but were meant to bleed. All of the numbness I felt throughout my trial of life has been put at rest. Someday, somehow, in some way, I'd finally be able to understand the satisfaction of getting my vengeance to this world. It was never always going to be innumerable faults and despair. I finally got what I wanted, and what I wished for ever so much. I made Henry get what he deserved, and put myself at rest for the nightmare I lived, all thanks to him. My hurting lasted for long enough, and this retaliation was far overdue. It didn't seem to come to affect me, whether I'd be dragged into the dim pits of hell to eternally serve a sentence, or I'd be blessed and carried in arms to hear the anthem of angels at the gates of heaven and be forgiven for my sins. It all felt complete. I finally tied up the loose knots and ends for myself. My name is, or was, Austin. I was granted the title of being considered human in that life. But, oh, how wrong they were about me. I used to hold the belief dearly to myself that I was against the entire world. I anticipated and feared that all would turn imprecise for me. I never thought that I'd be able to feel something that could bring me content, relief, and happiness through that life. And yet again, I surprised myself. Or rather, the world can surprise me. I finally got to hold the emotions I've lingered for, desired for, begged and pleaded for throughout my entire life. Reprisal and recrimination for those who wronged me before finally came. I felt okay. I felt happiness. I finally found out what it felt like, knowing that I was able to make things right, and make those who were against me agonize in their wounds for it. This was my life, as Austin. This is the end of the road for me. And I got the ending I always wanted. To feel happy. And now, wherever this void takes me, I shall follow and keep falling. Farewell. And perhaps, maybe we can meet again in a new life. Until then, sayonara, Austin.